This is Abelino Velez doing speech number 3 for COM 101. These are my note cards. This is my audience. Did you know that almost 40% of marriages in America end in separation? Isn't that crazy? And not only do the divorced parents affect the parents, but they affect the children as well. Owen by law tells us that almost 50% of children experience their guardian split apart. And the worst part of this is that children have to cope by themselves because the parents fail to realize their feelings. Our guardian should always help their child cope through the divorce because later in life they can develop unhealthy mental issues. The claims within this speech are supported by credible sources such as Kids Health by D.R.C. Linus, who is a psychologist and doctor who specializes in treatment of healthcare problems. And many of us have either experienced parent separation or know of somebody that has gone through it. And if you want to ensure that your child or future children come out with less problems and don't have to deal with these mental issues, I'd recommend listening in. We need to understand that the divorce affects children's mental health heavily before we actively try to solve this problem. First, I'd like to look at the issues that can develop which come from their parents separating. Divorce wreaks havoc upon the children's psychological well-being. And according to research gathered by Brian Onofrio and Robert Emery, parental divorce and separation is usually associated with an increased adolescent development, such as academic difficulties, such as lower grades, and they're more likely to drop out, as well as disruptive behaviors, like they can act up in school or outside of school, and they often have depressed moods. These are often short-term issues, but children can develop long-term issues as well. Research gathered by D. Onofrio and Robert Emery tell us that through divorce, children often experience poverty and more likely to experience hardships in their later romantic relationships. While there are many issues that children go through, there are also many solutions that can come along with it. The most effective way a guardian can prevent a child from slipping away is to make sure that they keep the legal talk and arguments out of the children's way. They allow their child to keep their same schedule, and they keep both parents in the child's life. The children do not need to hear the arguments or the legal talk because it can alter the child's view on one of their parents. And arguments affect the children heavily as well. KidsHealth.org actually tells us, KidsHealth.org published Helping Your Child Through a Divorce, and this tells us that children begin to dwell on what can happen, and this begins to scare them. D.R.C. Linus tells us that children who experience a hostile environment while they're growing up are more likely to carry mental issues later in their life. And no matter the situation with the households or what is happening, parents should always keep their children first. And Linus tells us in her article that the custody can usually go 3 ways. 1 is a parent has full custody. 2, parents have joint custody, which is where they share the child. And 3 is joint custody, through where both parents have custody, but one parent has authority in education and health. And whichever the child is in, the child should be the first priority. And this is kept so that make sure you keep the child's health first. keeping their schedule on track, whether they're in a club, sport, or it's their classes that they're taking. And soon after, Darcy tells us that children benefit most from both parents being in the children's life. So as you can see, the parents rely more on the problem relies more on the parents rather than the children. And as long as the parents are willing to be in the children's life and care for them, then it'll be better for the children. And I'd like all of us to consider and think of a scenario. The first one is where a guardian is there to help their child cope with the separation. I'd like us all to imagine coming home. First of all, put yourself in a parent situation and imagine coming home to your child with a smile on their face, motivated, ready to work. And inside, you're happy to see that your child's happy, and this is the way that they should be, all joy, no worries. But second, I'd like to think of you coming home, your child is constantly looking down, never being social, and showing that they don't care. And in your mind, it rubs off on you, and you begin to think about yourself. And this can all be avoided if a parent shows that they care and supports their child through the divorce. The well-being of this child relies in the parents' hands. It involves maturity on the parent's side. Even though they're going through the divorce themselves, the child must be put first. And as we come to an end, I'd like us to realize that parents play a large role in the outcome of the children's mental health. We can see this through how children can be damaged through the parents' divorce, and it can lead to many mental health issues. But parents can avoid this by keeping arguments and legal talk outside of the children's lives, ensuring the child's schedule doesn't change, and that both parents are present in the kid's life. And as this generation continues to develop, we need to make sure that we're putting the children as a priority, and parents should acknowledge their children and talk to them about the way they're feeling. We can prevent this from happening even further, and to show the children how to cope and listen to their issues rather than letting them deal with the battles themselves. Thank you. These are my cards. This is my audience.